Now let's talk about the handshake process. How do we actually establish a new connection? A new connection is established via this three-way handshake process. And I mentioned the SYN flag. In the very first message to establish a connection, one side, which we're going to call the client here, even though it's a full duplex connection, usually one side is going to be kind of a client and the other side is going to be a server. And the client sends the server here a SYN packet. What this means is it's a standard TCP packet with the SYN flag set, and it's going to carry important initial state. And this state is the receive window, which is, again, the rate at which this client can receive data, the fastest at which it can process data that's being sent to it. A source port number, which tells the server here which process on the client this is. And finally, an initial sequence number. So this is a random number that the client picks to represent byte 0. Now, the server is going to reply back with a SYN-ACK packet. And really, you can think about these as two separate packets if you want. There could be first an ACK and then a SYN. But TCP lets us combine these because you can set multiple flags. And so we'll teach it as such because this is what usually happens. And the goal of the SYN-ACK packet is to acknowledge having received the client's SYN. And you do that by sending back the with the ACK set and the acknowledgement, the sequence number field set to be the ISN that the client provided +1. And you also tag along, the server also tags along its own SYN, which includes the same information as before. The window, the port number, and the initial sequence number that the server picks. Again, I'll just point this out. Each side picks its own random initial sequence number for the data that it is going to be sending. So the ISN that the client uses is going to be how the client addresses data that it's sending to the server. And the ISN that the server uses is going to be how the server starts counting up, where the server starts counting from in the data that it is going to send to the client. Finally, to finish off this three-way handshake, the client's going to respond back with ACK n+1 to let the server know that it's received this ISN from the server and understands it, and at this point can also start transmitting data. And now we have a connection that's established. So now communication is free and open. So I'll point out, and I've mentioned this, but I really want to highlight it. Again, the sequence number that's sent, the initial sequence number on either side, they don't start from 0. They start from random numbers. And you might ask why. There's a longer answer, but the short answer is that for security. If you have everyone start from 0, then it could be pretty easy for someone to come in and spoof some packets and try to insert some data that really shouldn't be inserted into the byte stream. So at this point, we now have a way of doing a handshake. And through this handshake, the client server exchange this initial state. Now, in the regular operation of TCP, packets are being passed back and forth. That's great. But at some point, you're done sending your data. And here we enter teardown. And there's two teardown methods that could happen. One is the graceful normal teardown, call it a four-way handshake. The other is an exceptional teardown using resets. We'll cover both. So in a normal teardown, when the client is done sending to the server, the client is going to send a FIN. So that's going to be a packet with sequence number M and the FIN flag set. So at this point, there's going to be no data. Reading returns nothing. The server is then going to reply back with an ACK n+1. And at this point, the server is no longer expecting any data to come because the client has sent a packet with the FIN flag enabled. Notably, after sending that fin, just one direction of the connection is closed. The other side may still want to keep sending data, but eventually it'll want to close as well. And for that, the same exact process will happen. The server will send a fin, which is a packet with the fin flag set, and the client's going to respond back, acting, having received that fin, by sending the sequence number n+1. And at this point, the connection is now fully closed. Now, that's the graceful approach, this four-way handshake. The other way that we can shut down a connection is using reset packets. And whoops, these are used to fully reset the connection. And usually this happens if a device receives some TCP packet from within a connection that it doesn't know anything about. How would that happen? Well, that could happen if two people are talking on a TCP connection and then one of the machines dies and then comes back up. And so the other machine that was sending, it thinks that it's still talking to someone. It sends more packets within the stream, but the receiving machine gets these packets and doesn't have any state for this connection. So it sends back a reset, which tells the sender, hey, we need to just start over and start with the handshake. So these reset packets just say, I don't know who you are. Let's start again. Introduce yourself. Okay.